I never thought that a single text message could simultaneously make my blood run cold and serve as the ultimate, karmic punchline to a lifetime of dealing with an entitled sibling. But when you spend your life building an empire of glass, steel, and unyielding boundaries, you eventually learn that the people who refuse to respect those boundaries are usually the ones who end up shattering themselves against them. My name is Alina. I am 32 years old, and for the better part of the last decade, I have sacrificed my sleep, my social life, and my sanity to claw my way to the top of the luxury real estate market. I manage, acquire, and sell high-end properties for a clientele that exists in a tax bracket most people cannot even begin to comprehend. We are talking about tech billionaires, reclusive hedge fund managers, and international aristocrats who buy $10 million vacation homes like the rest of us buy a cup of coffee. My job is not just about showing houses. It is about absolute discretion, meticulous attention to detail, and managing properties with a level of security and perfection that borders on the obsessive. My 25-year-old brother, Kyle, is the exact opposite of everything I have just described. To understand the sheer magnitude of the disaster Kyle brought upon himself, you first have to understand the dynamic of our family. Kyle is 7 years younger than me. He was the miracle baby, the unexpected surprise my parents had long after they thought they were done having children. From the moment he drew his first breath, the sun, the moon, and the stars were entirely reoriented to orbit around his messy, demanding existence. Growing up, if Kyle wanted a toy, he got it. If Kyle failed a test, the teacher was at fault. If Kyle crashed his car, which he did 3 times before his 21st birthday, my parents quietly drained their savings to buy him a new one, citing his anxiety as the reason he couldn't be expected to ride the bus. He is currently in the 6th year of a 4-year degree at a university just far enough away to spare my parents the daily reality of his lifestyle, but close enough that he can drive home whenever he needs his laundry done or his bank account replenished. He is a prominent member of a fraternity that is infamous on campus for being nothing more than a localized hazard zone. He has never worked a day in his life, and he operates under the delusion that the world is a giant vending machine designed solely to dispense free things to him upon request. For the most part, I kept my distance. I had my own life, my own career, and my own sanctuary. After years of closing massive deals and saving every penny of my commissions, I finally bought myself a beautiful, secluded mountain cabin. It wasn't a mega mansion, but it was mine. It was a classic A-frame nestled deep in a pine forest, featuring a wraparound cedar deck, a massive stone fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a pristine, glacial valley. I spent 2 years renovating it, carefully selecting every piece of furniture, every vintage rug, and every piece of art. It was my escape from the high-stakes, high-stress world of luxury real estate. It was the only place where I could truly breathe. Kyle, naturally, viewed my cabin not as my hard-earned sanctuary, but as his personal, unearned party venue. He had asked to use it before. Actually, asked is the wrong word. He had informed me that he would be using it, and every single time, I had shut him down with the kind of ruthless efficiency I usually reserved for aggressive real estate negotiations. I knew exactly what would happen if I let him and his frat brothers within 10 miles of the place. There would be burn holes in the carpets, broken glass on the deck, and God knows what else. My parents always called me selfish and unyielding for denying him, claiming that family shares their blessings. I always replied that family also respects personal property, a concept Kyle couldn't grasp if it came with an instruction manual. The inciting incident for the greatest catastrophe of Kyle's life began on a Tuesday evening, during a mandatory, excruciating family dinner at my parents' house. I had come straight from work, exhausted after a grueling day dealing with one of my most difficult clients, Mr. Arthur Vance. Mr. Vance was a ruthless, highly litigious venture capitalist who had recently purchased a $5 million, ultra-luxury smart home deep in the mountains, about 40 minutes away from my own humble cabin. The property, known as the Sterling Estate, was an architectural marvel of black steel, smart glass, and imported stone. But more importantly, it was a fortress. Mr. Vance was deeply paranoid about corporate espionage and home invasions. He had tasked me with overseeing the final installation of a state-of-the-art security system. The estate was wired with silent perimeter alarms, biometric access points, high-definition night vision cameras, and pressure plates hidden beneath the gravel of the driveway. Most terrifyingly, the system was directly linked to a private, heavily armed security firm that promised a response time of under 10 minutes, alongside an automatic dispatch to the local county sheriff. I had the master keys to the Sterling estate in my purse. They weren't just standard keys, they were heavy, matte black tungsten fobs equipped with encrypted RFID chips, paired with physical laser-cut backup keys on a thick steel ring. They looked incredibly futuristic and expensive. They were sitting in my bag right next to my own cabin keys, which were attached to a simple, worn leather strap. At dinner, the atmosphere was already tense. Kyle was shoveling pasta into his mouth, talking loudly about his upcoming 26th birthday weekend. "So, Alina," Kyle said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, completely ignoring the napkin on his lap. "I've got a massive favor to ask, but you really owe me since you didn't get me anything for Christmas." "I got you a $500 gift card to a steakhouse, Kyle," I replied flatly, taking a slow sip of my wine. "You sold it to one of your frat brothers for cash to buy a dirt bike." "Whatever," he scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "The point is, this weekend is my birthday bash. The boys and I want to get out of the city. We need your cabin." I didn't even blink. "No." Kyle paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean, no? It's just going to be a small get-together, like maybe 20 guys, very chill. We just need a place to crash, drink some beers, and hang out. 20 frat boys in my personal home is not a small get-together, Kyle. It's a localized natural disaster. The answer is absolutely, unequivocally no. You are not taking your friends to my cabin." The temperature in the room plummeted. My mother sighed heavily, placing her silverware down with a dramatic clatter. "Alina, please, don't be like this. It's his birthday. He works so hard at school." "Mom, he has a 1.8 GPA and goes to class twice a week," I countered, feeling the familiar, exhausting frustration boiling up in my chest. "My cabin is filled with custom furniture, antique rugs, and fragile things. I am not turning it over to a herd of intoxicated 20-something men so they can use my hardwood floors as a slip and slide." The answer is no. Kyle's face turned a dangerous, mottled shade of red. He slammed his hands down on the table, making the water glasses rattle. "You are such a stingy, stuck-up, corporate robot. You have all this money, you have this huge empty house sitting in the woods, and you won't even let your own flesh and blood use it for one weekend? You're unbelievable." "I bought that house with my own money, Kyle." "Something you have never earned in your life," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You are not entitled to my things. Rent an Airbnb. Nobody will rent to us because of our fraternity's reputation," he yelled, inadvertently proving my entire point. "Then I guess you're staying in the dorms," I replied calmly. The rest of the dinner was a nightmare of passive-aggressive comments from my parents and outright hostility from Kyle. He glared at me across the table with pure, unadulterated venom. When I finally stood up to leave, grabbing my coat and my purse, my mother followed me to the door, whispering that I was tearing the family apart with my greed. I simply hugged her, told her I loved her, and walked out into the cool night air. I assumed the argument was over. I assumed my no was final. I underestimated the depths of Kyle's entitlement. The next afternoon, I was at my downtown office. It was a chaotic day. I was managing contractors for 3 different properties and finalizing the paperwork for Mr. Vance's Sterling estate. My heavy leather purse was sitting on the corner of my mahogany desk. Around 2 o'clock, the receptionist buzzed my phone, sounding slightly confused. "Alina, your brother is here. He says it's a family emergency." My stomach dropped. I told her to send him back. Kyle walked into my office looking surprisingly subdued. He was wearing a clean hoodie and had actually combed his hair. He sat down in the plush chair opposite my desk, looking down at his hands, playing the role of the penitent younger brother perfectly. "Look, Alina," he started, his voice soft. "I'm really sorry about last night. I acted like a total jerk. I was stressed about my birthday, but I had no right to yell at you like that. I know you work hard for your things." I was suspicious but also desperately tired of fighting with him. "Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate the apology. I wanted to make it up to you," he continued, standing up. "I know you love those fancy lattes from that artisan place down the street. I was going to go grab us both one. My treat. Can I get your usual?" "You're buying?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, it's the least I can do." "What's your order again?" "The oat milk thing." "An iced oat milk flat white," I said. "Thanks, that's actually really nice of you." "Cool, give me 5 minutes," he said. He hovered by the door for a second. "Oh hey, do you have any cash for a tip? The card reader at that place was down yesterday." "Sure," I said, turning my back to him to open my filing cabinet where I kept a small lockbox with petty cash. "Just a second." I had my back turned for maybe 15 seconds. I grabbed a $5 bill, locked the cabinet, and turned around. Kyle snatched the bill from my hand with a swift, jerky motion. "Thanks. Be right back," he said, his voice suddenly tight. He practically bolted out of my office, letting the heavy glass door slam shut behind him. I stood there for a moment, frowning. The interaction felt bizarrely frantic. But my phone rang, a contractor dealing with a plumbing emergency at another property, and I instantly shoved the weird encounter to the back of my mind. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Kyle never came back with the coffee. I sighed, assuming he had either gotten distracted or just decided he didn't want to spend the money after all. Typical Kyle. It wasn't until 4 hours later, at exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, that my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Kyle. "You're a selfish witch. Mom was right about you. I'm taking the cabin anyway. Thanks for the keys, loser. The boys and I are heading up now. Don't bother calling the cops, it's my family's house too. See you on Monday." I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, my brain freezing as the words registered. My heart hammered against my ribs. He was stealing my cabin? I practically tore my purse open, dumping the contents onto my pristine desk. Lipstick, wallet, mints, compact mirror, pens, all clattered against the wood. I sifted through the pile frantically. I found my worn leather strap. My cabin keys were right there. Safe, sound, untouched. I let out a massive sigh of relief, slumping back into my chair. He was bluffing. He hadn't taken my keys at all. He must have just run out, too cowardly to actually. My breath hitched in my throat. I looked at the pile on my desk again. The heavy, matte black tungsten fob and the thick steel ring of laser-cut keys were gone. The keys to the Sterling estate. Mr. Vance's $5 million, ultra-secure, silent alarm-rigged, heavily guarded fortress. The keys that I had specifically told Kyle, months ago when I first got the listing, looked like spaceship keys. In his frantic rush to steal my cabin keys while my back was turned, he had grabbed the most expensive, high-tech, aggressive-looking keys in my bag, assuming they belonged to my mountain sanctuary. My cabin was a rustic A-frame located off Highway 9. The Sterling estate was a modern architectural monolith located off Highway 4, about 40 minutes in the opposite direction. But Kyle didn't know the address of my cabin. He had never been there. He only vaguely knew it was up in the mountains near Blackwood Peak. If he put Blackwood Peak into his GPS and just drove, and if he pressed the unlock button on that RFID fob when he got close to whatever house he thought was mine. Before I could even process the absolute, monumental scale of the disaster that was about to unfold, my work phone, the encrypted one I used strictly for high-net-worth clients and smart home management, began to emit a piercing, rhythmic siren sound. It was an emergency notification from the Sterling Estate's central AI matrix. Alert, perimeter breach. Front gate forced entry. Alert, unauthorized access attempt at main entrance. Silent alarm, triggered. Private security team. DISBATCHED. ETA 4 MINUTES. Local law enforcement. NOTIFIED. I stared at the glowing red text on my phone, utterly paralyzed. I opened the property management app, which gave me direct access to the estate's high-definition security cameras. I tapped the live feed for the front driveway. The video loaded in crisp, 4K resolution, illuminating the twilight darkness of the mountain property. There, parked haphazardly on Mr. Vance's immaculate, imported Italian gravel driveway, were 5 beaten-up cars. And swarming out of them, carrying coolers of cheap beer, handles of bottom-shelf vodka, and massive portable speakers were roughly 20 frat brothers. And at the front of the pack, standing before the towering, 12-foot-high custom steel front doors of the $5 million mansion, was my brother Kyle. Through the camera's high-fidelity audio, I could hear everything. "Bro, your sister is loaded," one of the frat boys yelled, staring up at the 3-story glass and steel facade. "This isn't a cabin, this is a Bond villain lair. I told you guys she was holding out on me," Kyle shouted back, sounding incredibly smug, though I could see the confusion flickering in his eyes. He clearly didn't recognize the description of my rustic A-frame in this ultra-modern fortress, but his ego refused to let him admit he was lost. He held up the heavy black tungsten fob. "Let's get this party started." He pressed the button on the fob. Because he had bypassed the biometric scanner at the front gate, by literally ramming one of their trucks into the 500-pound security gate to force it open when the fob didn't work from the street. The house's internal system had automatically gone into lockdown mode. The fob was now useless. "Damn it, the button isn't working," Kyle muttered, jiggling the handle. "Hold on, she's got these weird backup keys on here." He found the laser-cut physical key and shoved it into the emergency override lock. He turned it. The door didn't open. But what Kyle didn't know, and what I was watching with a mixture of absolute horror and morbid fascination, was that turning the physical key during an active lockdown didn't unlock the door. It confirmed a forced entry to the security system. Suddenly, the exterior lights of the Sterling estate shifted from a warm, welcoming yellow to a blinding, strobing tactical white. The hidden floodlights in the trees snapped on, bathing the 20 frat boys in an unforgiving, stadium-level glare. "Whoa, what the hell?" one of the boys shouted, dropping a case of beer onto the stone porch, where bottles shattered instantly. "It's just motion lights, chill out," Kyle yelled, though his voice cracked with panic. He started kicking the massive steel door. "Come on, open up, you stupid." That was when the private security team arrived. I watched on the camera feed as 3 matte black, heavily modified SUVs tore up the gravel driveway, boxing in the frat boys' cars. The doors of the SUVs flew open before the vehicles even came to a complete stop. Out poured 6 men dressed in full tactical gear, bulletproof vests, helmets, and carrying non-lethal, but incredibly intimidating, riot weaponry. On the ground, everybody on the ground. "Hands where I can see them," a voice roared through a heavy-duty megaphone. The frat boys scattered like cockroaches when the kitchen light turns on. Absolute panic erupted. Several of them tried to run into the surrounding pine forest, only to be immediately clotheslined by the hidden tripwires of the perimeter fencing. Others just dropped to their knees, screaming and crying, throwing their hands over their heads. Kyle was frozen at the front door, the stolen keys dangling limply from his hand. 2 massive security contractors sprinted up the stairs, tackled him to the imported granite porch, and pinned his face directly into the puddle of cheap, spilled beer. I have the keys, it's my sister's house," Kyle was shrieking, his voice echoing through the mountain air, perfectly captured by the 4K microphone. "I'm supposed to be here, let me go." "Do you know who my parents are?" "You are trespassing on restricted private property," the security guard barked, zip-tying Kyle's wrists behind his back with terrifying speed. Less than 2 minutes later, the wail of police sirens pierced the night. 4 county sheriff cruisers came sliding into the driveway, their red and blue lights flashing wildly against the glass walls of the mansion. The police swarmed the property, drawing their weapons, taking custody of the 20 sobbing, terrified frat boys from the private security team. I sat at my desk in the city, 40 miles away, watching my brother get violently hoisted to his feet by 2 deputies. His face was scraped, his designer hoodie was torn, and he was crying hysterically. They read him his Miranda rights right there on Mr. Vance's porch. I didn't call the police to clear things up. I didn't call the security company to tell them it was a misunderstanding. I took a deep breath, picked up my encrypted phone, and made the hardest, most necessary phone call of my professional career. I called my client, Mr. Vance. I explained exactly what had happened. I took full responsibility for the theft of the keys from my office, but I detailed precisely who the intruders were, how they had stolen the keys, and the extent of the breach. Arthur Vance was a man who sued people for sport. When he heard that a group of intoxicated college students had rammed a truck into his custom-built security gate and tried to force entry into his multi-million-dollar sanctuary, his response was chillingly calm. "Prosecute to the fullest extent of the law," Mr. Vance said over the phone, his voice like dry ice. "I want them charged with felony breaking and entering, trespassing, and destruction of property. Have my legal team assess the damage to the gate and the stone porch tomorrow. We will be suing them civilly for every dime." "Understood, Mr. Vance," I said. The fallout was apocalyptic. My phone started blowing up around midnight. It was my mother, hysterical, screaming that Kyle had used his one phone call from the county jail to tell them he had been arrested for breaking into a billionaire's fortress. "Elena, what did you do?" my mother shrieked into the phone. "He said you set him up. He said you gave him the wrong keys to trap him. You need to call the police right now and tell them he had permission to be there." "I cannot do that, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Because he didn't have permission. He came to my office, distracted me, and stole keys out of my purse. He just happened to steal the wrong keys. He broke into the home of one of the wealthiest, most litigious men in the state. I have it all on high-definition video. He's your brother, you have to fix this," my father bellowed in the background. "I can't fix this," I replied softly. "Kyle played a stupid game, and he just won the ultimate stupid prize. I suggest you find a very, very good criminal defense attorney." I hung up the phone and turned it off. The next few months tore my family apart, but honestly, it was a destruction that was long overdue. Kyle and his frat brothers were formally charged with felony breaking and entering, felony vandalism, and criminal trespassing. Because they had used a vehicle to ram the front security gate, the charges were elevated. The university, desperate to avoid the massive media scandal of a tech billionaire pressing felony charges against their students, immediately expelled Kyle and suspended the entire fraternity. But the criminal charges were only half the battle. Mr. Vance's army of corporate lawyers descended upon Kyle and his friends like vultures. The damage to the custom-imported security gate, the damaged granite on the front porch where they had dropped the beer, and the cost of the emergency private security dispatch totaled over $50,000. Mr. Vance sued Kyle and the driver of the truck directly for the entire amount. My parents tried to fight it. They drained their retirement savings, took out a second mortgage on their house, and hired the best lawyers they could find to defend their golden child. But the evidence was insurmountable. The 4K video with crystal-clear audio of Kyle holding the stolen fob, trying to break in, and the text message he sent me explicitly stating he was stealing my property, made it an open and shut case. Kyle avoided prison time only by accepting a brutal plea deal: 3 years of heavily supervised probation, 500 hours of community service, and a felony conviction permanently etched onto his record. He was 25 years old, a college dropout with a felony B&E, and saddled with a massive portion of a $50,000 civil judgment that he had absolutely no way to pay. My parents blamed me, of course. They told the extended family that I had deliberately laid a trap for my brother, that I had intentionally placed the wrong keys in my purse knowing he would steal them. I didn't even bother defending myself. I just cut them off. I blocked their numbers, changed the locks on my apartment, and upgraded the security at my actual cabin. I still work in luxury real estate. Mr. Vance was so impressed with how perfectly the security system handled the breach, and how transparent I was about the incident, that he gave me the exclusive listing rights for 3 more of his properties. My career exploded. I spend my weekends at my quiet, pristine mountain cabin, sitting on my cedar deck, sipping coffee, and enjoying the absolute, unbroken silence of a life free from entitled people. Kyle currently works the night shift at a fast food drive-thru to pay off his court-ordered restitution to a billionaire who doesn't even notice the money hitting his bank account. And every time I look at the heavy, worn leather strap holding my cabin keys, I can't help but smile, knowing that the strongest locks in the world are nothing compared to the prison of one's own entitlement.